What on earth did we just witness? A 10-goal first period, 7-3 Florida over Montreal, and then it didn't really get any better. 9-5 was the final. And this brings me to a point that I had talked about in the Binnington video. Never trust Sergei Bobrovsky. Now, I mentioned this in our Data Draft Discord. Somebody was asking me whether they should start Bobrovsky or Grubauer. Grubauer playing against Columbus, I think. And, yeah, that's correct. No, San Jose. And then, because somebody else asked me about Copley against Columbus. So, Bobrovsky's playing the Canadiens. So, you look up how he's done, or how the Panthers have done against the Canadiens, and they've won 5 of their last 6. But they've also scored 5.1 goals for per game, but they gave up a bunch as well. And that is where you don't want to necessarily start Bobrovsky against a team that can score. They just play horrible defense. And Bobrovsky just kind of showing what kind of goalie he is. Now, he's been very good lately. I don't want to confuse anything because he's actually been playing a lot better. But this is one of those cases where you just can't trust Sergei Bobrovsky, especially if your playoffs depend on it. I would not stake my entire season on a Sergei Bobrovsky start against a bad team, or against any team for that matter. But yeah, this is not what you want to see if you own Bobrovsky. It is what you want to see if you had kept any of the Panthers. Remember, they only have a 2-game week this week, so I assume that a lot of you dropped your Panthers like I did. I dropped Verhaeghe. He ends up with 2 goals, +4, 6 shots. But hey, I have a 2-game week from him this week, and then potentially a bye week next week. So I thought I'd just hold on to the 4 goaltenders that I had, one of them being Tkachuk. But nonetheless, if you held on to Verhaeghe, that paid off. I do have Ekblad, and I kept him. He's been struggling a lot lately, and he picks up 2 huge goals for your fantasy team, 5 shots. And then Tkachuk doing what he's done all season long, 4 points, 3 shots, a couple hits probably as well. And then a couple of other things to note in this game. Harvey Pinard with a goal, only a -1 in a 9-5 game is not bad. Some of these guys are, -3, -2. Some of them are even, Pitlick, Tierney, but those are guys that not necessarily you're going to own in fantasy. But Harvey Pinard still hitting a ton. Not a lot of shots today, but still scoring. Josh Anderson is quietly, putting in some points, scoring a couple shorthanded goals every now and then, or getting a bunch of shorthanded opportunities. So if your league weights shorthanded points a little bit more, Josh Anderson has been getting a ton of opportunities shorthanded, and he's cashed in on a couple of them. And then a couple of these other guys, I mean, if you look at the Panthers, if you owned any of these Panthers and you held on to them this week, they're probably paying off for you, except for Duclair. I mean, I think there was a stat at the end of the first. It was Duclair, it was Mark Stahl, and I guess Kovacevic. No, he's Canadian. So I don't know, but there was like 3 or 4 guys that just did not have a point. Everybody else, 14 guys, had a point in the first period. So Duclair, that's a very disappointing night for him, but pretty decent opportunity to go out and get a bunch of points in your league. Hopefully you own some of these guys. I'm just going to pull up the live stream in case there's any Q&A coming in. If you guys have any questions, just leave them in the comments. I'll be checking the live chat.
He's Canadian. So I don't know, but there was like 3 or 4 guys that just did not have a point.
Gustafson or Saros, who should I keep? That's interesting.
So Duclair, that's a very
Luis or Lewis, because I own both of them.
Pretty decent opportunity.
And if we're looking at the goaltending hub, Gustafson is higher than Saros. Gustafson is an 81.4 on the goalie ratings.
Coming in.
And then I'm trying to pull it up here.
Leave them in the comments. I'll be checking the live chat. I don't know, but there was like
because I also have Jari. Jari has dropped to a 60.
Saros, who should I keep? That's interesting.
Saros is a 74.2. So Gustafson is the better goalie. But if you need start volume, then Saros is the guy to go for.
Gustafson is,
but this is Gustafson. One of the things that I've been noticing lately is the attention to detail defensively for Minnesota. They are one of the best defensive teams in the league. They don't play tonight, so I don't have their stats right here. I just wanted to keep this open just to show you guys like all the games going on and what the scores are, so you can keep on top of it while you're listening to the chat. But yeah, let me but this is just pull up some of the team defensive numbers because Minnesota has actually been a really good defensive team for the last number of months now. 2-3 months, they've been a very good defensive team, and that's always been beneficial if you own Gustafsson, but it's now helping out Marc-Andre Fleury owners as well. So that is something to keep an eye on. And I had somebody today in the Discord asking about dropping Bobrovsky after this game and picking up Fleury, and that to me seems like a no-brainer because Fleury is a pretty decent goaltender. He hasn't had it at every point in this season, but Minnesota is 13th. I'm sorry, no, that's expected goals. So expected goals against Fleury owners as well. So that is something to keep an eye on. And I had somebody today, expected goals against, they are 13th in the league. Actual goals against, they are 4th in the league because they have two excellent goaltenders. So, I mean, for me, Gustafsson is the safer play to assure that you're going to get a quality start every time you put him in the lineup. But at the same time, if you're looking for start volume, then I would definitely go for Saros because they have to ride him, and they're technically still in a playoff hunt. They have a 25% chance of making the playoffs right now, despite the fact that they sold off at the deadline. And they are currently playing right now against Chicago. And Chicago, where did this come from? They have nobody on their roster, and they just beat the best team in the league in Boston. Boston up 2-0 on Winnipeg right now. Let's see who's got... go for Saros, Zaka with a goal, and Trent Frederick with a goal. But that's not helping you. And people have been complaining about Hellebuck. He hasn't been himself lately, but again, he's a start volume guy. And Winnipeg has gone through a slide over the past couple of games here. I forget their record in their last 10. I think it was like 3-5-2 or something to that effect. It was not Jets-like. And this is one of those situations you can't drop Hellebuck, so you're just going to ride it out and stake your team on him. But now I'm looking at the chat. Jari really screwed me this week. Yeah, he's a start volume. I drafted him in the 4th round. And I've held on to him all year, and there was a point in December where he was really productive, and for whatever reason they just dropped off. So while we're talking about Tristan Jarry, just going to go to Moneypuck
so you're just going to ride it
and
out
show you guys
your team on him. But now I'm looking at the chat.
The expected
really
goals
screwed me this
against.
week. Yeah,
He's
a start volume.
I drafted him in the 4th round.
Pull it over here.
So what you're looking at here,
where he was really
in this range from basically around
just dropped off. So
mid-November until
the
the end of December, Jarry was phenomenal, exceptional goaltender, and even DeSmith was ownable at that point. And then they kind of slipped a little bit. The goals against went up, the expected goals against went up, and then it's been as high as almost 3 goals against per game now in February, and it's, he's got pulled a couple of games. It's dropped back down because DeSmith has played a couple of good games, and Jarry is underperforming his goals saved above expected. So that's one thing to keep an eye on, is how he's performed. But basically, I had a decision to make on my own team between Jarry and Corpusalo. And if you compare the numbers over the last month, there's no question that Corpusalo is the better goaltender. So I had to cut him loose. I cut Jarry loose earlier this week. It was tough. It's one of the things that I struggle with, is trying to find the motivation to get rid of a player that I've hung on to all season long. So Jarry is not doing too well, although he does play well against the Rangers for whatever reason. He had a good start against them Sunday, had a decent start against them today. There's no question. Let's see if we can pull up his numbers. They did lose, but he was much better than he was in the previous game.
It was tough. It's one of the things that I struggle with, is trying
912 save percentage, 34 shots, 31 saves. So that's not as bad as getting yanked on what was it, 3 goals on 7 shots or 4 goals on 7 shots or whatever in the previous game. So Jarry, he's up and down. And the thing that bothers me about Jarry is that I can't trust Pittsburgh's defense the way that you could in the last couple of years. Their defense used to be top 5 in the league, And then for what I think it's John Marino. Marino gets dealt, and their defense goes down. So that's affecting their goaltending. And now Jari is a question mark for me. And I just had to drop him because we're in the playoff season, and you have to optimize your team.
He's up and down. And the thing that bothers me about Jari is that I can't trust Pittsburgh's defense the way that you could.
Luis is asking about Saros playing more, so he may score more points overall. If you're in a points league,
and then for what I think it's
odds are you're getting more points for wins, and if you get points for total saves, that could change the dynamic as well. That would be one of the cases where I would want to own John Gibson, because even if he loses, he's putting up 10 to 15 points in a loss. So with Saros playing more, the volume might make up for the fact that he's not winning. But he is, they're in a playoff hunt, so they're still potentially competitive. And this is one of those things that I talked about in the preseason with the bubble team bonus or the bubble team bounce. You need to have goaltenders that are going to play down the stretch. So that's a question right now. If you own any Boston guys, if you own Ullmark or Swayman, they've lost 3 of their last 4, which is kind of, incredible. Thinking of what they've done this season, but now they have nothing to play for, so they're in already. They're number 1 in the division. They don't have any reason to start their guys. They have reasons to potentially work on load management for some of their guys, Bergeron, Krejci. So that would be factoring into. But you can't drop Ullmark, and you can't really drop Swayman. So you're kind of just going to ride it out and expect that they're the better team. They're going to win, and just hope for the best. But getting back to the chat now. But would I hold Dubois? He played amazing until he got hurt. Then he came back, got hurt, had an update where he was supposed to be back today, and now he's out again. If it's not going to hurt you holding him on IR, I would definitely hold him. I'm holding him in one league. So that would believe it's this league, and I'm down because he's not playing. And there's only one IR spot in this league, and the rules are very weird in this league. But yeah, I do like Dubois.
Played amazing until he got hurt. Then he came back, got hurt.
When he's healthy, he's basically a point-per-game player, as far as I know.
If it's not
just trying to pull up his stats here, but
I would definitely hold him.
Server seems to be down.
Believe it's this league, and I'm down.
But yeah, Dubois. Anybody in that top 6 in Winnipeg is somebody that you want access to. The only, Ehlers was one of the guys that I was worried about because of the fact that he came in hot as soon as he got back, and then he kind of faded a little bit, but he's brought it back in the last couple games. So Dubois on the season, he's a 79 on the Data Draft Player Hub with hits and blocks, 0.9 points per game, 93rd percentile in goals, 90th in assists, 90th in shots, and 94th percentile in power play points. So yeah, I would definitely hold on to him and just hope for the best. Hope he can get into your lineup. But if you're desperate, if he's on your IR spot, you don't have to worry about dropping him to add a player, because you're going to have to drop somebody else anyway. But if you need those points late in the week, then you might as well drop him just to try to win your week and just go from there. But I do think he's worth holding on to if you can.
94th percentile in power play points. So yeah, I would definitely hold on to him and just hope for the best. Hope he can.
I don't know why the double audio, because I muted my TV, so I don't know, but I just muted the live stream again. Sorry about that. The double voice. It probably sounded cool if you smoked a J before this or something, so hopefully that was the case for some of you out there. Jari's been my key go-to for a round 6 draft pick. Yeah, I've typically 4th to 6th round for me is where I find Jari, and I've gone to him I think twice now, and he's been pretty good. Laine just got dropped. Debating dropping Mercer or Ehlers, but leaning towards keeping both. Thoughts? I would definitely, unless Mercer drops off in the next 2 weeks, then I would pick up Laine. If you need shot volume and if you need goals, then I would go for Laine. But Mercer's been scoring goals left and right, but it just, if he drops off in the next 2 weeks, then maybe think about it. Same thing with Ehlers. I think Ehlers is starting to come back around. We'll have to wait and see how he does. I have him on my team, and he was a little bit disappointing, but he was still shooting the puck quite a bit. So in his last, 6 games, 2 goals and 4 assists, 6 points for Ehlers. So he's back as much as he can be. He's still in the top 6. He's still getting power play one time. Mercer and Ehlers should be better than Laine. Laine is always in and out of the lineup and relatively inconsistent. And the last thing that you want in your fantasy playoffs is inconsistency and guys that are going to let you down. But with that in mind, I would probably hold on to both Ehlers and Mercer and just see how they progress over the next week or two. I was going to drop Jari for Corpusalo. Only issue is Kings are doing a 50-50 time split. Yeah, but to me, like, I would rather a goalie play once or twice a week and put up an extremely good start than have him play 3 times a week. Because I'm in a Cats league. I'm in a Categories league. So that one start where he doesn't play well could bring down your save percentage and goals against for the whole week. If you're in a points league and you need the volume, then it changes the dynamic a little bit. But I have Gustafsson, he's in a split. I have Tkachuk, he's technically in a split, a 3-way split. And then I have Corpusalo, who's in a split. And then I have Saros, who's not. So I get the volume, and then I have the guys that are getting me the starts that are quality starts on any given night. See who scored in Vancouver. Kuzmenko from Beauvilliers, that top line factoring in again. And I mentioned Kuzmenko, I believe, in last week's video. If he was available on your wire to go grab him. If he's not, to grab Beauvilliers. They've been relatively productive since he came over. Seeing that the audio is fixed, so that's good. Sorry about the double voice, triple voice, whatever it was. While we're on the topic of goalies, what do you think of Freddie Anderson and Binnington for playoffs next week? Was planning on streaming a third goalie like DeSmith or Halak. Okay, there's a lot to unpack there. I like Freddie Anderson. He's on a team that is way better than anybody else in the league in terms of goals against per game. So let me bring this up. My son running upstairs. That's great. He should be asleep right now. So goals against per game, they are second behind Boston, 2.52. And that means you're going to want exposure to Anderson, Ranta if he's healthy, and Tkachuk. Boston's number 1. Let me just pull it over so you can see it. Just using StatMuse right now. So obviously Boston goaltenders are owned up. Hurricanes goaltenders are probably owned up. This is why you own Fleury if he's available, and Gustafsson if he's available. Akira Schmid, if he's going to get any starts, the Devils are an extremely good defensive team. I would look at Maple Leafs goaltending. If they have any injuries and they have to call up Joseph Wall, that could be a nice streaming option because they're a good defensive team. If Wedgwood gets a start for Dallas, that could be a streaming option. Same thing for Varlamov. Aiden Hill doesn't look like he's coming back, apparently. But if Logan Thompson is there on your waiver wire, he could potentially come back in the next couple weeks. That could be a nice little pickup. Halak is a decent streaming option. But this is how you would factor it in. Obviously, I use the goaltending hub. But one of the things that you can just kind of, on any given night, a better defensive team will give your goaltender a better chance of stopping the puck and putting up good stats for your team. So I would look at the team defensive metrics, how they're performing, in the last 5 or 10 games. Are they giving up a ton of goals? Are they tightening it up? And look for some of those type of backups that are on those good teams. DeSmith is not necessarily one of those for me. I think of him. I did think of him earlier in the year as a potential option, but Pittsburgh has been so inconsistent, and they just haven't found their defensive game to the extent that I thought that they would in the beginning of the season. What seed am I in my leagues? Does it show it here? It does not. I am in this league, I'm first. In this league, I'm first. In this league, I'm 5th, I think. And in this league, I'm 3rd. And this is the weird league that I complain about every now and then. The Data Draft League, nothing to complain about there. I'm just getting beat by, I think Mark is in first. So kudos. But there's in the Data Draft League, this is guys from our Discord who are on top of everything. They are very knowledgeable fantasy hockey players. So the fact that I'm in 3rd doesn't make me feel any worse. They're all really good at what they do. And that's why that's a really good resource. You can find the link in the description below to join the Discord group. It's $5 a month, and odds are you're only going to use it for this month and then cancel it anyway, so you might as well. And then you also get access to the player and goalie hubs, which I just updated the player hub today. And one of the things that I wanted to mention about the player hubs, so Jakub Vrana, I did a fantasy file on him earlier today. He has basically been a half a goal per game guy for the last 2 seasons when he's in the lineup. And right now you don't really have to think about longevity or anything like that. You just have to think about winning your week. So this is what his hub looks like. 97th percentile in goal production, 92nd in power play production, and 89th in shots. So if you're looking to replace Kaprizov, if you're looking to replace Svechnikov, he's obviously not going to hit. He's not going to block. The assists are really low. But with him shooting that much and scoring that much, and the fact that he's playing with Buchnevich on the second line, and he's on a 10-game point streak with 18 points in his last 10 games, that's somebody that you could potentially look to get that level of production in at least 3 categories to help you get through the week at least, and then kind of reassess from there. But that's one of the things that I noticed when I updated the hubs today was how prolific Vrana has been. And it is a small sample size. So his change interval was 20, which is crazy because he's only played 10 games this year. So that's going to factor into how much he's changed week to week. But he's still, he did that exact thing last year. He was half a goal per game, 97th percentile in goals. He was covering shots and power play the same way. So that's something that, we were all kind of hopeful for when he was out of the player assistance program. But we didn't know if it was going to happen in Detroit. And Detroit has a load of forwards. They just couldn't get everybody into the lineup, so they ended up shipping him off to St. Louis, and he's gotten an opportunity on the second line and on the top power play unit as well. Getting back to the chat. Triple voice, audio bounce back. Fixed. Who do I think will make the playoffs in the West? It's a great question. Let me just bring up the standings right now. Why does it not just automatically sort for the wild card? That's dumb. So in the West, Minnesota's climbing, and they're about to catch Dallas, which is crazy with Kaprizov out. I think Colorado obviously makes it. They have games in hand and everything. I don't think Colorado's going to go back to back. They lost Kadri, and they've just been banged up all year. They still don't have Landeskog. It's just not their year, and they're still the plus 31 goal differential, and they at times were a bottom 5 offensive team in the league. So that's kind of crazy to think about. Excellent road record, decent at home as well, but I just don't, they're obviously, they have the pedigree, they have the players that have done it before, but I just don't think that they're going to win the cup. Winnipeg has been sliding back. I think they make it. I don't think Nashville makes it, but I've seen crazier things happen. Then you have Vegas, LA, Edmonton, Seattle's right there. I think Seattle's getting in I think all 4 of these teams at the top are getting in. I don't see Calgary getting in. It's not their year. So of those teams, if the Kraken are wild card 1, then wild card 2 would be Winnipeg at this point. And I think that's kind of how it shakes out. St. Louis isn't going to climb. Nashville's just barely hanging on, and they're just ahead of Calgary with games in hand. If Nashville could win, they just don't have anybody left. I mean, I think Forsberg's still out. They have Novak in the top 6. They've got Evangelista in the top 6. And they're, good stories for fantasy because they're guys that are unowned that you can go out and grab. But I don't know if they're going to be able to play those difficult games in the stretch run trying to get into the playoffs. It just doesn't seem like it's going to work for them unless Saros goes ballistic. And I hope he does because I own him. But Vrana or Evander Kane. Hold on, I'm catching up. Let me start from the top. Vrana or Evander Kane? It should be Evander Kane, just because he's way more complete. Do I think Quick can take over the number 1 spot if Thompson and Hill ever come back healthy? No, I don't. I'm very surprised with how much better he's playing, because LA is not a bad defensive team, and he was horrendous in LA. And now he comes over to a top 5 defensive team in Vegas, and he's playing much better. But at the same time, he's still a small goaltender that uses his reflexes and anticipation, reading the game and everything else, and he can get exposed if you can open him up. And there's a lot of high octane offensive teams in the West, and they're going to have, I think they do have a relatively easy schedule going down the stretch. But with that said, I just don't. It's hard to believe in him when I look at the numbers, and they're just horrendous all the time. On the goalie hub, Jonathan Quick is a 41. So he's got an 88th percentile team exposure now that he goes to Vegas, but everything else, 6th percentile in goals saved above expected, -18 in terms of goals saved above expected. Save percentage is an 878. Goals against is a 3.5. Start volume is good. Wins are 56th percentile, but the team exposure is the only thing that's making him even remotely interesting to me in fantasy. But he's been doing it lately. He's been, really good since coming over. He's starting tonight, so he's in right now. Not right now. In 1 or 2 minutes, 6, 7 minutes, he'll be starting. Oh no, I'm thinking Kings. I'm still because it's just automatic with him that I'm thinking Kings. So he is currently in 5 saves, whatever. Markstrom is another one of those guys that the numbers just haven't been there for him, but he's starting to come around lately. So if you don't own him, I don't know if I trust him enough to bet your entire fantasy season on him. But if you do own him, I don't know if I'd drop him. Here's his game log for Markstrom. 840, 968, 882. Shutout, 879, 909, 941. That looks good. 867, 818. So it's like every other game, he's kind of screwing you over. And that's going to hurt you if you need quality starts for the entire week, which you do in your playoffs. So same thing goes for Quick, and I wouldn't necessarily trust either of them in the playoffs. That's just me. If you need it, if you're desperate, I think Quick is the better of the two options just for team exposure because of the fact that Vegas is such a good defensive team. Corpusalo or Skinner, Martin asks. I would go Corpusalo. Again, the team exposure is really good. Edmonton not known for being a defensive team. They will win. So if you're in a points league and you're just looking for wins as a base level for your point totals or whatever, then I would potentially look at Skinner. But this is a lot of the same thing that I was just showing you with Markstrom. 906, 838, couple good starts, 839, 929, 893, 833. So again, if save percentage doesn't matter to you, then maybe you could go for Skinner. If you're in a league that has more of a weighting for wins, he's not really getting shutouts, I don't believe. But yeah, for wins, he will get you probably a bunch of wins. But I do like Corpusalo better. Let's compare those numbers with Corpusalo, because we've had a couple of people ask about Corpusalo, and I just want to show you what I was looking at when I took dropped Jari and took Corpusalo. So every other game he's starting 929, 933, 923, 920, and I believe this was with Columbus. So you're right. He's in a split right now, 1A, 1B. Who knows which one of those he is, but every game he's in there, 2 goals against, and he's winning the game. So you can put him in right now. I mean, obviously, if he throws a stinker tonight, I'm going to look pretty bad saying all this, and obviously I own him, so it's going to hurt my team, but this is what I would prefer in terms of just trying to win in the playoffs. I would rather have a guy that I can bet more often than not is going to put up a good start and potentially get the win than a guy that's a little bit riskier and, you know, the upside isn't necessarily going to be there. Back to the chat. Any thoughts on if Logan Thompson will be back by next week or the next? I have a bye this week for playoffs. I don't know. In the Discord group, I was hearing some rumblings that he was closer than Hill. But I don't know how close, and I don't remember what his injury was. Skating in a different rink than his teammates practiced. So it's a lower body, and that's tough. Lower body injuries for goaltenders kind of worry me, and that is a factor in Tristan Jarry's file because he had that obvious tweak. He tweaked something at the Winter Classic, and he really hasn't been the same since. So then it was an upper body injury for Jarry, but the lower body injury kind of started everything off. They listed him as day-to-day, and he just kept going back out and going back out. So the lower body injury does worry me a little bit about Thompson. Luckily, in Vegas, he's not going to have to do a whole lot because they're very good defensively. Sam Girard for the games or Mike Matheson? That is a great question. Are you talking about this week? Girard or Matheson? So Girard's been on fire. There's no question about it. But I do like Matheson as well. And I think Matheson is way more complete. Girard right now isn't shooting a lot. He's picking up assists and getting some power play points every now and then. But with Makar back, he's going to get less power play time than Matheson. He's not getting the shot volume, and he's not getting a ton of hits. He is still blocking shots, but I do think Matheson is the better own. If you have hits and blocks in there. Just going to show you Matheson. Goal, an assist, a power play point, 3 shots tonight, 3 shots the previous night with an assist, a goal, 2 shots. When he's not scoring, he's getting a couple hits, a couple of shots and hits. This doesn't have blocks on it for whatever reason. But yeah, I think he's a 75 on the Player Hub, and he's been really productive. So I think Matheson would be better. It's just a matter of, if it's this week and you're looking at the schedule, then that would be one thing to keep in mind. And then, yeah, Vrana or Evander Kane. Evander Kane is a no-brainer because of his hits and shot volume, as long as he's in the lineup. Because if he's not, then that's obviously going to be very frustrating trying to get somebody else at the last minute to put in your lineup. So for Peter, this whole Rodriguez versus Compher debate is, like, I've been seeing it nonstop in the Discord group. And I don't have an answer because they're to me, they're identical players. They're both kind of line dependent in the fact that if they're in the top 6, if one of them is on the power play unit PP1, then that's the guy that you want. They're both productive whenever they get an opportunity in the top 6, playing with good players. And with Lehkonen down, if Rodriguez is up on the top line, then that's going to excite you and you're going to want him. Compher potentially still playing with Rantanen on the second line. That should excite you because Rantanen's obviously elite in fantasy. I don't think either of them are necessarily as must-own as Lehkonen was or Nichushkin, so I think that there's a drop-off. Let me try to pull this up. Colorado. So yeah, let me see if I can do this really quick. trying to get it so I can show you the rankings. But Makar is number 1, Rantanen's number 2, McKinnon's number 3, Lehkonen was number 4 on their team on the rankings with hits and blocks. Nichushkin was behind him. Then it was Byram and then Compher at a 69. And Erod is down at a 62. But so it's you know, either one of them are good streaming options. I don't know if either of them are a must-own. Obviously, the Avalanche have a really great schedule for your fantasy playoffs. They play a bunch of off nights, so you're going to want Avalanche players. But if you're, you know, banking your entire season on Rodriguez versus Compher, I really can't tell you who's better. I think Compher is marginally better, but if Rodriguez is playing top line, then obviously that you're going to want that exposure. On any given night, Rodriguez can go off for 5 or 6 shots, get a bunch of points, like Lehkonen was doing. Lehkonen was hitting a lot more, which is why he was so high rated on the Data Draft Player Hub with hits and blocks. How do you decide which player to keep on the lineup and who to bench if the lineup is full? Let me show you the secret sauce. StatMuse. So I'll give you an example. This is not necessarily related. I mean, it is related to your question, but so tonight I wanted to place a bet on the Rangers game. I'm a Rangers fan. I was watching the game. So I said, which Ranger has the most points versus Pittsburgh over the last 2 years? Chris Kreider. Okay, so I put a bet on Kreider anytime goal scorer, and it hit. So this is what I typically do if I have a guy, you know, like, what's a good example? Matheson versus Panthers. Okay, he's got a goal, 3 points in 3 games. He might be a good guy to play against the Panthers because he used to play for the Panthers, and now he's going back. He wants to show that they made a mistake, yada, yada, yada. But you piece that together when you have the information at hand, and this is a really easy tool. I use it all the time. When I set my daily fantasy lineups, that's pretty much how I do it. Crosby versus Rangers. Incredible numbers. Now, it depends on how you phrase it. So this is going to give you career numbers. But this will give you the game log type of view. And I like to look at the game log to see, you know, yeah, if you've got 8 points in 6 games or whatever, that's great. But if 5 of them came in one game, then maybe I don't want to bank on you putting you into my lineup. But, you know, in this case, obviously Crosby goes off against the Rangers pretty much regularly. So that's what I use. If it's a tiebreaker between 2 players, I'll see how that player performed against the team they're playing tonight and compare that with the other guy and see, you know, okay, this guy's really productive against this team. I'll go with him. So that's kind of the secret sauce that I use for daily fantasy and for start and sit options, just because it's a little bit more, you know, it's not going to predict what's going to happen, but it's going to give you a better idea because certain players like to play against certain teams. Obviously, if a guy's playing against his former team, that's going to boost his value that particular night. If he's playing against, Crosby lights it up against the Islanders. I think that's the team he's got the most points against in his career. So if he's playing against the Isles, he's in my lineup if I have him. But that statmuse.com/ask is what I use all the time for that kind of stuff. Should I pick up Vrana if I have Buchnevich and Kyrou? I don't know if I'd go that heavy on St. Louis. And Buchnevich and Kyrou have definitely been more hot than Vrana. I think Buchnevich has 7 points in his last 3 games, and same with Kyrou, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know if I want that much exposure to the Blues right now, but I mean, if you've been owning Buchnevich and Kyrou for an extended period of time and you like every game, you know, Buchnevich is a top 10, top 15 point producer this year, so you might as well. But to me, it would be a little bit too much exposure for the Blues. I always go by average points. Is that the right move? It's probably not, just because again, like I'm assuming you're in a points league, so that it does give you a little bit better idea. But what I would use instead of average points is I would just go by different time scales. So average over the last 7 days, average over the last 14 days, average over the last 30 days. And if you see a trend, so that's what I did with Corpusalo. Over the last 7 days, really good. Over the last 14 days, really good. Over the last month, really good. Way better than Jari. So then I went with Corpusalo over Jari. So that's, instead of just looking at average points for the entire season, I would do it kind of like that to see, are they hot right now? And if they are, have they been backing it up over the past couple weeks? And it's not just a one-off. Peter says, I've stacked Pasta, Bergeron, Marchand, and recently picked up Zacha too. I'm winning my week, even though they've been cold as ice. Should I be worried? I wouldn't necessarily load up on Zacha as well. If they have a good week, then you can, because they're obviously a great team and they're going to be productive more often than not. But I'm not worried, but I'm wondering if Boston is the hottest team in the league or one of the hottest teams in the league over the next 3 weeks, which is what you're kind of going for. You want players that are on the best teams for the next 3 or 4 weeks. Like, who's going to be the hottest team in the league over this stretch? And to me, it's going to be a team that has something to play for, and Boston doesn't. Thoughts on Hayton? He's red hot right now. I don't see it lasting, but you should ride it while you can. Just going to pull up his stats because let me show you this. So I didn't know this. I've been literally running this fantasy channel for a while. I didn't even know this. And maybe it's Yahoo Plus, but maybe it's not. This research tab, you can go here. Barrett Hayton, one of the most added players in the league right now. But you can go to Who's Hot and see some trends of, and the thing that I'm a little bit bothered by is it doesn't give you the games played, because it's like, how many games did McKinnon score 6 points in? I'm guessing it's over the last week. But it gives you a general sense. And Barrett Hayton, 8 points, plus 8, 2 power play points, 14 shots. He's red hot right now, no question about it. But he's never done it before. So there's not a track record. This is not his usual standard. So I wouldn't necessarily bank on it for your fantasy playoffs. But if he's hot and you need to, use that to get through your week, then I would definitely ride the hot streak for a short period of time. How high is Brady Tkachuk's ceiling in a bangers league long term? I think he's pretty much established what his high is. I don't think he can get any better than now. In my hits and blocks hub, he's an 83, and he's above 95th percentile in everything except for shot blocks. So I don't think you can get any better than that, really. In fact, let me look at the rankings. He's top 20 in the rankings. And the reason he's not any higher is because he doesn't block any shots. 5th percentile in blocks. If he blocked any amount of shots, he'd be top 10. So if you don't have shot blocks, he's a top 5 player in fantasy. And I think that's his ceiling. I don't think he's at a point per game right now. He could maybe get into the 1.2 point per game territory, which I think is where his brother is. No, Matthew is at 1.36 points per game. So I guess that's his ceiling, if he can do anything like what his brother's doing. But Matthew doesn't hit. Matthew is 28th percentile in hits. So that's going to change the dynamic if you need those hits. So on the hits and blocks hub, Matthew's an 80, Brady's an 83, despite the 0.36 point per game disparity. So in a hits league, you're going to want Brady more than Matthew. And I think offensively, Brady's ceiling is what Matthew's at right now. My son is crying upstairs. My wife's got to be at work in the morning. I'm going to have to cut off the stream and go take care of that. I'm apologizing to all of you if I didn't get to your questions. I think I'm close to the bottom of the chat. So let me just rapid fire through the last couple of these. UPL or Sogaard? That is a tough choice. UPL should be motivated to win with Buffalo trying to make a playoff push. But Ottawa has been better defensively over the last month or so. Is Yahoo Plus worth it? Not really. The start-sit suggestions are terrible. The only thing that it does is it optimizes my lineup. So instead of start players that are playing, it starts optimized players. But even that kind of messes up every now and then. It's really not that worth it. Who are some players I think could crack the first round for drafts next season? There's probably like 20 players that I think could go in the first round. Jack Hughes, Tage Thompson, guys that you wouldn't have expected to be first round picks should be first round picks next year. But yeah, I'm going to have to go take care of this. But thank you guys for joining in. Hopefully I answered your questions. Let me know in the comments, not the live chat, but in the comments, when you'd like me to do this again. Maybe Saturday night if you guys need help with the Sunday streamers. I could hop on, answer some questions again. I'd like to do this weekly during the playoffs so that I can hopefully help you guys win your matchups and just, give you a little bit better of an idea who you could pick up to do that. But thanks again for